today on Rappler. Protests over a film mocking Islam continues in Cairo and spreads to Yemen, a day after riots kill a U.S. ambassador in Libya. USAID files fraud charges against the Philippines' top anti-slave trafficking group.
The Chinese have always thought that they have this 100 years of history of having been a victim of colonial powers. And so whenever their claims, their territorial claims are challenged by whoever, they really push back hard.
And CNN's Beijing bureau chief says China will take a tough stand on its territorial claims as a rising power in Asia. Hello, I'm Maria Ressa. Welcome to Rappler, your social news network. Protests erupt at the U.S. Embassy in Yemen and continues in Egypt on Thursday. Days before the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, protests break out in Libya as U.S. officials confirm a U.S. ambassador was killed, the first time since 1979 when mobs stormed the consulate in Benghazi as well as the embassy in Cairo. The protests in Sana'a, Yemen, and Cairo, Egypt are the latest in a wave of violence to hit the Middle East over a film seen to be mocking Islam. The movie, Innocence of Muslims, portrays Muslims as immoral and violent and pokes fun at the Prophet Muhammad. In Yemen, protesters stormed the U.S. Embassy complex in Sana'a as police used water cannons to drive them away. In Cairo, Egypt, police used tear gas against a crowd that threw stones and bottles. This comes 2 days after U.S. Ambassador to Libya, Chris Stevens, and 3 other Americans were killed in Benghazi, Libya. The identity of filmmakers behind the anti-Islam film, which sparked deadly protests in the Middle East, remain a mystery. The film's director, who calls himself Sam Bathel, went into hiding after protests erupt over his movie. He says he is an American Israeli with Jewish financial backing. Doubts about the director's identity grew, culminating in U.S. reports that say the film's real director is a Coptic Christian convicted of financial crimes. The film's cast and crew say they were deceived by the producers, adding they had no idea it was anti-Muslim propaganda. A cast member says offensive words had been dubbed over the original dialogue. A consultant of the movie, Steve Klein, denies Israeli authorities were involved in the film and says Bathel, which he acknowledges is a pseudonym, was mortified to hear of the U.S. ambassador's death. The film was screened in a Hollywood movie theater about 3 months ago and received no attention until an Arabic language dubbed version was released last week and footage was aired by an Egyptian TV station. That triggered the protests. The United States Agency for International Development files fraud charges against anti-trafficking group Visayan Forum Foundation. In an August 31 search warrant, the presiding judge says Visayan Forum Executive Director Maria Cecilia Obanda may possess, quote, falsified private documents used to defraud the foundation's donors. The donor agency says the documents show Visayan Foundation meant to, quote, defraud USAID in a project worth at least $1.65 million US dollars or 69.16 million pesos. The project involves building halfway houses for human trafficking victims in airports and harbors. Visayan Forum legal counsel Lawrence Arroyo says they feel, in his words, betrayed because USAID has been a partner for 6 years. Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago says the upcoming Senate probe on resigned Interior Undersecretary Rico Puno might have been sabotage. None of the 11 senators of the committee conducting the probe confirms attendance. Santiago, who called for the probe on September 14, says the senators could have been ordered by Malacanang to skip the hearing. Santiago wants Puno probed on his attempt to retrieve documents from the condominium of late Interior Secretary Jessie Robredo. She says that if Puno fails to show up at the hearing, it proves he's guilty of the charges. Director General Nicanor Bartolomes will stay as chief of the Philippine National Police until he retires in March 2013. A source close to Bartolomes says President Benigno Aquino decided not to move Bartolome to the Department of the Interior and Local Government to replace resigned Undersecretary Rico Puno. Last week, Aquino told reporters he was thinking of Bartolome to replace Puno, but in a chance interview with reporters on Wednesday, Aquino says Bartolome does not seem to be ready for the job. A source tells Rappler Bartolome finds the DILG post, quote, too political. Palace officials also reiterate incoming Interior Secretary Mar Rojas will have a free hand in appointing his undersecretary. CNN Beijing Bureau Chief Jaime Flor Cruz says it's predictable that China takes a tough stand on its territorial claims, noting 100 years of colonial inroads into the world's oldest civilization.
The Chinese have always thought that they have this 100 years of history of having been a victim of colonial powers. And so whenever their claims, their territorial claims are challenged by whoever, they really push back hard. They push back hard on the US, on Taiwan, they push back hard on South China Sea, here in China.
Flor Cruz adds China will continue to rise and the Philippines, along with other neighboring countries, must learn to coexist with it. He notes China's leadership is in transition and beset by its own internal political unrest. He compares it to a teenager in the body of a 30-year-old Hulk.
This is a special year in China. It's a year of leadership transition. China is facing a lot of problems domestically, lots of challenges. China's economy is slowing down. There's dissent is growing. Imagine China as like a teenager who is inside the body of a 30-year-old Hulk. No? So China's economy and society is changing much faster than the political reform. And so what we see is a rising power that's challenging the status quo power of the United States. And yet I think the Chinese are still in the process of figuring out what does it mean to be a rising power.
Apple introduces its new iPhone 5, a lighter, thinner, and more powerful version of its iconic mobile device. Apple Chief Executive Tim Cook calls it, quote, the biggest thing to happen to iPhone since the iPhone. Improvements include a larger screen, a faster processor, an 8-megapixel camera, and support for the latest wireless internet service, LTE. The iPhone 5 will be available September 21 in some parts of the world, including the US, Singapore, and Hong Kong. It's not expected to arrive in the Philippines until October or November. Apple also unveils an all-new iPod Nano and iPod Touch. Let's now look at Rappler's Wrap for today, a list of the 10 most important events around the world you shouldn't miss. At number 3, just days after his election on Monday, Somalia's new president, Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, survives an attack by 3 suicide bombers at a hotel that was his temporary residence. Terrorist group Al-Shabaab claims responsibility for the attack on microblogging site Twitter. HSM successfully targets a hotel near the airport in Mogadishu where a high-profile meeting was being held, read their first tweet. HSM is the acronym for the Al-Qaeda-linked group's full name, Harakot al-Shabaab al-Mujahideen. Several tweets followed, with the last one saying, quote, HSM will continue fighting until the very last invader is eliminated from our land. At number 10, while Apple was announcing its new products, 5,000 startups and entrepreneurs gathered in San Francisco for TechCrunch Disrupt. The speakers included Facebook's founder Mark Zuckerberg, who was asked about his company's disappointing IPO, LinkedIn's founder Reid Hoffman, Twitter founder Jack Dorsey, and Yahoo's new CEO Marissa Mayer. One of the speakers is film star Jessica Alba, who talked about her new endeavor as a technology entrepreneur. For the full top 10, visit Rappler.com's The Wrap. It looks like it's going to be a Manny Pacquiao and Juan Manuel Marquez fight again. ESPN's Dan Rafael reports top-ranked promoter Bob Arum met with Michael Conks, Pacquiao's advisor, to, quote, lock down final terms for Pacquiao-Marquez 4. Arum says it will definitely be held on December 8 at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, dispelling rumors the two would be fighting in Marquez's hometown of Mexico. Other opponents considered to fight Pacquiao were Timothy Bradley and Miguel Cotto. The report dashes hopes of fans waiting for a historic showdown between Pacquiao and undefeated American boxer Floyd Mayweather. After the crash that claimed the life of DILG Secretary Robredo, the Philippine aviation sector is under scrutiny. Are local charter companies and flight schools safe? Carlos Santamaria reports.
Captain Ben-Hur Gomez was a Philippine Airlines pilot for over 40 years before he established a flight school in Clark. He charters flights like the one Jesse Robredo took when his plane crashed near Masbate. Captain Gomez says an essential security protocol was ignored when they let on board a student pilot, Nepali Kshitiz Chand.
It's a no-no. A training flight cannot be a commercial flight. A charter flight cannot have a student on board.
The crash put the spotlight on the flight school and charter flight industry in the Philippines, which experienced a boom a few years ago but is now fighting to change its bad name. Captain Gomez thinks this should start with the regulator. The United States and the European Union say the industry regulator in the Philippines is not capable of enforcing global safety standards.
Somebody from up there must put his foot down and says, let's clean up our act and mean it, instead of appointing people that are not qualified. Like I said earlier, it's the case of the blind trying to lead those who can see.
Some schools are accused of padding the logbooks of their students, so they graduate with less flight hours than required. But Captain Gomez's school claims they can make money without cheating.
Very transparent, we're honest. It's part of our mission and vision of the company. Nothing is added, padded.
Like the Nepali student on Roberto's flight, a number of foreigners are enrolled in local flight schools. It's cheap for them, and the instruction is in English. Most are from Asian countries, like Raymond Au from Macau.
Could be expensive. I'm not sure about Hong Kong though, but in the United States it's going to be about 50% more than what I can get from here. So that's why I picked the Philippines.
Becoming a pilot is also a good career option for Filipinos. The problem is how to come up with 2 million pesos, but if you can get the money, it's a glamorous job that pays well.
Basically, when I was an engineer, I was making around 20, 30, 35,000 a month. But as a pilot, I have a lot of friends in the airline industry. As a first officer, not the captain yet, they're making around 180,000 per month. And I know some captains who make at least $500,000 every month.
Filipino pilots can earn even more overseas, so there is an almost guaranteed return on the investment. Despite the bad reputation and the crash in Masbate, there are still some flight schools that say they are training their students properly. The Philippines can be a great place to learn how to fly and a training center for Asia. Carlos Santamaria, Rappler, Clark Airfield.
It's the last stretch of the Balls for Peace drive as Rappler holds a symbolic handover of footballs to various Sulu units of the Philippine Marines. Marine Corps Colonel Ernesto Evangelista Jr. receives the donations from Rappler Citizen Journalism and Community Engagement Director Chai Hofilenya. PMU units in Sulu distribute the balls to communities where they formed football teams. The innovative campaign has been extended to Cotabato and Maguindanao. The drive has so far collected 1,176 balls. The Internet Mobile and Marketing Association of the Philippines, or IMAP, holds its 6th Boomerang Awards, celebrating innovations on how brands communicate with their audience. Rappler's Mood Meter and Mood Navigator bags the bronze medal. It is the only winner in the awards publishing category. BBDO Guerrero takes home the gold boomerang for the tourism department's It's More Fun in the Philippines. Every story on Rappler has its own mood meter, which gives you 8 emotions to choose from. Click on how you feel and your vote will be counted on the front page, the Mood Navigator on the front page. If you take a look, the Mood Navigator takes the top stories, top 10 stories, and then crowdsources the mood of the day. You take a look at Apple unveils the new iPhone, you have 46% happy, 30% annoyed. Those must be non-Apple users. And the story that's gotten the most number of votes today in the last 24 hours, Move.ph, UP Los Baños registration, 69% happy, 10% inspired, all leading to the mood of the day. Today, most people are happy. Well, that's Rappler's Newscast for today, Thursday, September 13th, 2012. Visit Rappler.com and watch our newscast Monday to Friday. Tell us how you feel on our mood meter and help us crowdsource the mood of the day. I'm Maria Ressa. As we say at Rappler, tomorrow begins today.